Everybody, it's Rory from ANSgear. We're upstairs with the brand new Shocker Era. We've also got an amp right here so we can compare the two guns together. But we want to show you what the new features of the Era is going to be. Now this Era that I have here is a pre-production Era. So the bolt engine that's inside here is really the only thing that we're not going to be looking at today. They are still making some changes, some things that are going to be different with it, but we're going to look at everything else on the gun. So we'll talk about the things that are different. We'll talk about the things that the new engine is going to incorporate into the gun. Plus we'll talk about all the other new features that are included with the gun. So to compare that against something, we brought the amp up here. We brought the previous version of the gun up so that we can take a look at it right here. So let's take this off the stand real quick. I'm going to move it over here. And then we're going to put this down. And then we will come in a little bit on this just so we can see it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the barrels, and then we'll talk about the barrels that are on here. So this is coming with the V2, so the new version of the Freak Barrel XL, and then it's going to have the 688 insert. So that's the blue insert right there. But depending on paint that you're shooting, you definitely want to bore properly when it comes to shooting this gun. Well, I mean, you should be boring properly when it comes to any gun that you're shooting. But in this gun, boring properly, it's going to make a huge difference in a lot of different factors right there. So, I mean, that just goes without saying. Bore your paint properly to get the best performance out of your marker. Just do it. It makes total sense. But we've got this here. Lengthwise, it's slightly longer, so it's like 15-inch on this, so 15-inch All-American in the version 2 XL right there. Looks real nice. So we can move those out of the way, and we can start talking about really the gun here. So we'll start from the top and kind of work our way down. Feed necks look to be the same, as well as the lever. The lever does have a little bit of a different design on it right there. Used to be that the lever on the old one kind of tapered and got narrower as it came forward. This lever seems to be flat and wide all the way through. So no taper, and as far as how the width of the lever stays the same. Gives you a little bit more to grab onto right there. Coming down to the eye covers. The eye covers have changed in shape, and internally, under the eye cover, they have made a difference or a change inside there. So let me take this off. We'll pull the original. That's the wrong Allen key, Rory. We'll take this off of here so that we can look underneath it. And then we'll take the other one off as well. All right, so your eye cover comes off, and then we've got our sensor right there. The detent is still on that spring right there, so it's part of the eye cover. We know that. We move over to this one, pop the eye cover off. The eye cover still detents part of the eye cover right there on the spring. It's a great system, works fantastic. But a lot of people, when they had their eye sensor in here, when you pulled the eye cover off, the sensor would want to pop up and didn't necessarily want to hold in place in the pocket here. So they've redesigned that with a O-ring that sits on a post that kind of goes over part of the eye sensor board that's right there, and it holds it in place so that eye doesn't want to pop up right there and get out of whack, making it more difficult to get your eye cover back on. Kind of got a cheat sheet of things over here. So that makes that just a kind of like just a little extra added benefit right there. Some people never had that issue. They didn't run into a problem with that, but they've had an issue where that can pop up. You go to put your eye cover back on. If you're not careful, you can possibly smash or crack or break the sensor right there. So you put a little thing in there, solves the problem. I love it. Love it. Put that back on. So while we're looking at that, let's just travel backwards to the back of the gun. and the bolt cap. As you can see, there's a tremendous difference in the bolt cap right here as far as how far it sticks out. I never had this problem or ran into this problem, but apparently people were shooting the amp, and this was hitting their lenses and their goggles. So if you had a goggle that had a lens that protruded a little bit further out than normal, you could scratch up your lens with this. So they made it shorter. So now you've definitely got a more streamlined back cap right there when it comes to how far it sticks out. Now if I line feed necks up, the bodies seem to be pretty close to the same length, but the back cap definitely does not stick out as far on there. And you can see just how different that is on there. Traveling down to the front of the gun, the reg assembly, the internals to the regulator have not changed. But what they did do is make the housing that the regulator sits inside of, they made that different. So they've kind of redesigned the air path that the regulator air is flowing through, gives it a higher flow, more volume, so it's going to be able to recharge the gun quicker. So at high rates of fire, or just if you're going through just shot after shot after shot, this is going to be helpful for you. So the parts themselves didn't change. How it mounts in there and how it's sitting in there definitely changed. A lot of people didn't like how thin this grip was at the front, so they made the grip thicker. Plus, they didn't like the texture of the grip itself. They wanted it to be more rubbery. They wanted it to have a better tactile feel to it. So again, they've gone with a more rubberized grip on here, and they've also added some channels into it. So you can see right here on this, there's these steps that are on the reg body right there. Those steps fit into these little slots on the rubber grip, and it holds it in place so that this is less likely to rotate or turn. I mean, I never found mine rotating or turning, but I guess that could happen right there. So another benefit right there. So a redesigned air path for the regulator to make it just work better. Let's move backwards this way right here. So the trigger. So the trigger potentially on the older model, on the amp, could have an issue where if you over adjusted the trigger, you could break your micro switch off of the board. That problem, or that potential problem, has been solved by putting a stop inside the trigger frame right there. So there is now a piece of metal, part of the frame, where if you adjust the micro switch activation screw too far, it'll hit that piece of metal before it will break the switch off the board, which is a huge issue right there, a huge change. I think that's an awesome change right there, because it eliminates the potential for people to unknowingly break their board. And I've seen it happen plenty of times where people are just trying to change their trigger around, and then they're pulling it and they don't feel it working right, so they're pulling harder, and then they end up just breaking their micro switch. So that has been changed. I love that. Let's kind of look at the bottom of the gun right here. So back here, we've still got one screw that is retaining the frame onto the gun, because the front part of it hinges in place. Before, they went with an open socket right here. I shouldn't say an open socket, a socket screw right there to hold that in place. So just undo that socket. But it did leave like some gap around the socket itself, and a lot of players could feel that, and you could get a lot of dirt and debris up inside there. But with that out, that's going to just slide open like that. This new gun, the Era, has a countersunk screw, which takes up all the space right there, so we're less likely to get any kind of dirt or grime or crap up inside there. And it makes for a flush mount, so there's no gaps or anything like that. But we take that screw out, pop the frame up, and we can take that off. Now underneath here, probably one of my biggest gripes about the gun was this transfer doohickey right here. So this transfer post was threaded in to the frame right here, and it was Loctited in place as well. So you get leaks out of there. If it came to re-anodizing it, it's just another step you had to go through to take care of that. That's been taken care of. They've gone with a different kind of system right there that uses a bigger, more robust O-ring, 2 of them actually, to get the air transfer up and through there. And they've not only done this for frame to body, but they've also changed it out for frame to ASA. And they're using the same piece, top and bottom, and that piece is sitting right in here. So let me pull this piece out. You can see it sitting right in there. This little, it's kind of like a little pipe. And I can pop this pipe out. No longer do I need to unscrew it. No longer do I need to worry about Loctiting it in place. It's just a little piece right here, a little transfer pipe, and it has an O-ring on the top and the bottom. So it is free floating inside here. When the 2 pieces come together, it locks it in place so that it can't go anywhere and allows the transfer of air through there. Cool thing about this though is if for some reason this to this, the frame to the body was loose and it wasn't tight up against there, this would still work. All right. Same with the bottom right here. If you took a hard spill, a dive, and your ASA shifted, or you had an issue on the previous guns like that, you would probably get a leak and it would just be leaking. You'd have to go back to the pit and fix that. With this new transfer plug that they're using between the two, even if it's loose on there, you take a hard dive, a hard slam, whatever it happens to be, it will still hold up inside there. The O-ring's bigger. You got 2 O-rings on it. And it's able to move and float inside there. If there's a little bit of separation, it can accommodate for that, and it will still keep your gun gassed up and not leaking. So it keeps you in the game playing when potentially you could have had a problem with another system in there. So I think that's awesome right there. I really love that because for the Luxes that I've owned and the Shocker, I've had that leak happen right there, and this solves that. I like it. We still have the same solenoid assembly with the same manifold assembly where you can just flip the switch, unplug your solenoid, and then pop your solenoid right off. So that's still the same process right there. We've got a redesign in the tubes. It holds the tube in place better so that it can't slide around and get out of the way and potentially cause a leak inside there. So there have been some redesigns in that as well to just make it a better set right there. Let me replug this in and then we'll move on. All right, so we've got another issue that people saw on their amps was the fact that sometimes after removing the grip frame and maybe taking the board out to do cleaning and putting it back in, that when you would take the frame and the body and put them back together, you'd get an eye fault reading or the eyes wouldn't work properly. And that's because the upper section of the board right here, where that connects to the eye board that's up in here, sometimes that could misalign. And so when you've got these pins that are supposed to push against each other, you might have them slightly offset and they wouldn't contact and they would produce a fault reading in the eye, which, you know, if the 2 pieces can't connect to each other, they're not going to work, and it just assumes that there's a fault right there. That has been taken care of now. The way that they've set up where the board sits and the screws that are holding it in place, you don't have that problem anymore. We don't get any way to misalign the board. As I take these screws off, I want to note to you that these screws have a shim on them, which makes sure that they can't go too far down into the gun, because these grips, even though the look of the grip is the same, they have been texturally redesigned to be more sticky. I don't call it sticky. To be more grippy, I guess is the right word for it right there. So they want to make sure that you can't over thread these screws into the gun and potentially go in and damage the solenoid, which is going to be sitting right on the other side there. So they've shimmed that screw to make sure you can't over install it, I guess would be the word for that. So let me take these off. And we'll get down in here. There we go. All right. So we've got battery inside there, sits in the same spot as it did before. We talked about the trigger, with the trigger having that stop in there now, so you can't over adjust it to smash the micro switch off, which is great. We've got a better fitting board inside here with the screws holding it better in place and indexing it so that it can't come out of position in there, which I think is awesome. ASA at the bottom has a twist knob. Now the knob has this knurling on it all across here, kind of the same design as we see right here, just gives you a better grip on the knob and allows it to gas and degas right there. Inside this core has been redesigned as well. So if we look inside here, we've got on the amp side, the circular one that you see, I'm tapping it with my thumb right there. That piece threaded in to the bottom and relied on one O-ring to both seal that core in and seal around the pin of the on-off knob to create the airflow through there. Now, the new design right here, which you can see has kind of got these wings on it, and it has a little bit of a gap in there so that you could get a pick underneath it and pop it out, is just pressed in now. So no longer is it having to be threaded in and tightened against the bottom. It's pressed in, so you can just press it in or pop it out. And it's using two O-rings. So an O-ring to seal the pin on the knob and an O-ring to seal the core that's being dropped down inside of there. So those redesigns in there, hopefully alleviating an issue where you can get an ASA leak through there. And we talked about the transfer plug. Again, this exact piece is down in here as well. So the same piece down in there. Now, we've got all that apart. And like I said, we kind of glossed over the bolt because, again, pre-production bolt right there. But let me just go over some of the things that the bolt is doing. So bolt has got better paint handling. So if we were talking about undersized paint, we could get some rollback issues in undersized paint. That's been solved inside of there. Plus, much better on brittle paint. So if you're trying to shoot super brittle paint, this bolt is going to handle that paint better than previous models of there. The efficiency and the overall operating pressure have remained relatively the same. So there isn't a big difference right there. So when we do efficiency testing on this, we should see the same results that we saw with the amp, which I'm looking forward to because those were really, really nice. And we're going to get that same smooth, quiet shot that we saw from the guns before. So better paint handling and what I got? Better paint handling and better on brittle paint. Also, the cycling of the bolt is faster now. So when it comes to mech shooting, a lot of people need that gun to set back quicker. So the faster you can get that bolt to retract, the quicker you can get paint down in, and the less issues you're going to have with chopping, short stroking, things like that. So again, that has been updated in this new bolt assembly, new engine, to cycle quicker, to come back faster, to allow that paint to get down in. And that's a big deal when it comes to mech, because we're not all super fast with our fingers. So if we can get the bolt to retract quick, we're looking pretty right there. I think that's it for this one. Once I get a production model version in, then we can open up the bolt engine and we'll look at all that stuff too. But let me just go over this real quick again. Milling. So it's much sleeker than before. I kind of just didn't even think about that. But the milling of the gun is a much plainer milling. And they said they're wanting to show off the beauty and timeless appeal of simplistic design. I think what they're going for here and what we've talked about is they've gone with a very simple milling design for the stock version of the gun. And when it comes to private label versions of the gun, if they do come out, there will be a stark difference between the simple milling of the gun that's coming from factory and the private label editions right there. So giving that difference, a noticeable difference, I think is going to make a world of difference when it comes to being distinct right there. Plus, a gun that's just simple and smooth like that, it's so easy to clean. Like if you're getting shot, you're getting blasted, you don't get paint stuck in little nooks and crannies and things like that. You just whoosh, you wipe it off, you're done right there. I love it. Right there. Redesigned bolt core for improved reliability, sound signature, reduced ball breakage, ball rollback, all those things, especially ball rollback. Today's paint is getting so small that you need to accommodate for that. And so this bolt is doing that. Talked about flow dynamics and the regulator, the ergonomics, the grip texture was a big deal that they really wanted to talk about. Shortened back cap, we got that right there. Much smaller profile on the back cap. Improved trigger. I think not being able to break micro switches off your board is paramount right there, and that is awesome that they've tackled that head on right there. One thing about this trigger though, it's not backwards compatible, so you can't take this one and throw it into your amp. Not going to work. Right there. So we got that. The body to frame seal, frame to ASA seal, super important. No Loctite plugs in the body, so any place in older guns that needed Loctite, that's all been taken out. So there's no more Loctited plugs in the gun. So when it comes to re-anodizing, maintenancing, things like that, less things you have to worry about. Redoing the Loctite properly, making sure that it cures, you don't get air leaks, done. Dunzo. None of that stuff anymore. Eye wire retention, we talked about that, where the eyes can pop up and out. We don't want that to happen, so we can put that O-ring set on there, drop that eye in place, and keep it there from coming out. And then 15-inch All-American barrel, which we saw right here. Looking beautiful right there. So here we have it, the brand new Shocker Era. We're going to take it outside, we're going to shoot it, we're going to do a bunch of stuff with it, but we wanted to give you guys a first look at it, coming soon, in stock at ANSgear.com. Outside with the brand new Shocker Era right here. Got my tank on it. We got the 15-inch All-American barrel, shooting some evil out of it. We've put it at 15 balls per second, ramping just to let it rip right out of there. But this gun is brand new from Shocker. This is the new Shocker Era. It's available through the website. Get yours today at ANSgear.com. All right, guys, something I forgot to say in the video right here is the weight of the guns. So we're going to throw this in real quick just so you guys can see the weight difference between the two guns. So an original Shocker amp right here and the new Shocker Era. So let's turn our scale on and get it up into frame so you can see it right there. So we will throw the amp on. So this is with battery, with barrel, with insert, just no tank or hopper or anything like that. So we're looking at 1 pound and 12 ounces. So 1 pound and a quarter, or 1 pound and 3/4, sorry, right there. So 1 pound 3/4. Go to this one. So 1 pound 14. So it is 2 ounces, 114.4, 112.3. So 2 ounces heavier right there. Do that one more time. That was 112.3, 114.4. So just slightly heavier. We've got a little bit more meat, probably just on the gun in general. We've got less milling, so there's a little bit more body right there. We've got a little bit more material in the barrel. We don't have such big cuts right there. So just, you know, the weight is not terribly different. We're talking 2 ounces, but there's your weight differences on your gun on the Shocker amp and the Shocker Era.